4 months ago, Caesar summoned Lanius to appear within his tent citadel at Flagstaff. There, he gave an important order to renowned legate. Lanius, I need you to take Dog City. I'm going to need the wealth that Denver has to offer if I am to cross the Colorado River and take the dam. I'm going to entrust you with a handful of cohorts and trust that in 5 years you will accomplish this mission. Take any longer, and I'm going to consider you a failure and mark you for dead, as anyone who has failed me would. Show those profligates no mercy. And with those words, Legate Lanius would begin his expedition into Colorado. Having established itself around the Rio Grande River, it was time to clear out and integrate all our neighboring tribes, with the goal of providing a better resource base for Lanius' expedition. First one to be subjugated was our southern neighbor, the Blue Roasted tribe. They would fall within a week, and right as they did, Lanius' forces continued southward into Mescalero Nation, who fell even quicker than their ally. We then turned our attention northwards to Santa Fe, and after defeating them we continued along the Pecos River into Backwoods and Fort Summers, soon reaching the borders of the Executives, a group of old-tech workers that had recently come out of the revolt. Having retained a lot of pre-war technology, they would be a harder enemy to face than any of the tribes we defeated. We decided to make minor preparations for the fight to ensure our success, and while our troops were preparing, we also made efforts of integrating each of the tribe's territory we had conquered. After several months of build-up on their border, Lanius' troops entered the Executive territory. Their biggest settlement was quickly placed under siege and captured. Most of their troops would perish defending against Lanius, including several power-armored troops whose armor was sent to Flagstaff to research. The Executives would surrender shortly after, as we lay our eyes on north once again. For a few months already, our scouts have been traversing the mountains that separate us from Colorado, and they made shocking discoveries. A cult-like army of robots protects the valley with Diana, a self-proclaimed goddess, as their leader. We were caught by surprise, as she invited Lanius into the valley to discuss a possible alliance between the two. She claimed to have had the ability to reshape the Legion itself and make something else of it, something we didn't want to. Maybe in the next video, Lanius said to her, as Legionary Envoy was exiting her hideout. Seeing the technology Twin Mothers possessed, it would be unwise to let them exist right on the outskirts of our core territory. We launched an invasion after returning home. The robotic army was a fierce enemy to face, but with our tactics we managed to cut off some of their forces. Particularly, our chariots proved themselves to be useful, as they poured into the valley, while our soldiers were holding off the main robotic army. As our chariots entered the Twin Mother's lair, Diana escaped far north, deep in Colorado. Having no interest nor resources for chasing her, our army turned on yet another tribe, Sun Dogs. This war would be personal, as they have killed several of Legion's previous expeditions to Colorado. Our forces quickly broke through their defenses and went along the river, as well as deeper into their territory, eventually capturing their capital. There we would find out that on top of their leaders escaping, all civilians were slaughtered, not to leave us any war spoils. But fortunately, our next target were the remnants of the Brotherhood of Steel, whose armor the Legion's leaders strongly desired. Having no mobility, Brotherhood's power armor units got stuck behind as our chariots once again rushed to their main bunker, quickly seizing it. The remaining tribe was soon subdued too, although not without casualties. Our last enemy, Hand Dogs, stood between the Legion and Denver. They were our last enemy, and once we captured Dog City, our mission would be a success, 4 years early. Before marching on Dog City, Lanius ensured the Legion was fully prepared. He sent Frumentari to gather intelligence on the Hand Dogs' defenses, identifying weak points in their fortifications and supply lines. Knowing the Hand Dogs relied on ambush tactics and well-trained hounds, Lanius adapted. Chariots were set aside in favor of disciplined infantry formations. Machine guns were given to our troops, and traps were set up with stakes as bait. Finally, after months of preparations, the invasion has begun. As we started taking enemy positions, our own land got invaded by Hand Dogs. The Hand Dogs' counter-invasion was a desperate attempt to slow Lanius. While their warbands disrupted our supply lines, they failed to halt the advance. Initially, Lanius attempted a swift strike on Dog City using chariots, but hand dogs' sheer numbers and warhounds made such tactics ineffective. With swift strikes failing, Lanius shifted to a relentless war of attrition. The Legion advanced methodically, encircling, annihilating hand dog warbands one by one. Each battle followed the same brutal pattern: cut off, crushed, and left behind as the Legion marched forward. The hand dogs, once masters of ambush warfare, found themselves trapped. Their desperate counterattacks failed to break the Legion's disciplined formations. With every skirmish, their numbers dwindled and morale shattered. Pushed back relentlessly, the hand dogs had no choice but to retreat towards Denver. By the time they reached the city, they were no longer an army, just scattered remnants awaiting their inevitable end, which they would face in March, by us entering Denver. After Denver fell and the battlefield fell silent, Lanius found himself staring at the spoils of their hard-won victory and the heavy cost it had extracted from his men. In that quiet moment, he realized that following Caesar's endless orders no longer served his sense of honor. He gathered his most trusted warriors, and without loud declaration or dramatic uprising, they simply stopped answering Caesar's commands. It wasn't an open rebellion, it was a silent, deliberate break from a man whose ambition had long chained them to an endless bloodshed. Realizing that to build a force capable of standing up to Caesar, he needed a strong base, Lanius turned his eyes to Texas, a land brimming with untapped wealth and resources. He understood that by seizing the riches of Texas, he could secure the supplies and funds necessary to forge an independent power that could rival Caesar. With this clear goal in mind, he and his loyal cohort began their careful move toward the Texan frontier. Texas mostly consisted of tribes very similar to those we faced during our march to Colorado. However, in the heart of Texas lay the local Brotherhood of Steel chapter, who have forged their own confederation with the goal to unite Texas themselves. Lanius knew the Legion had to grow stronger before the next war. The conquered tribes, Blue Rose, Mescalero, and Santa Fe, were conscripted to their ranks, while the survivors of the executive and hand dogs were put to use. Those who resisted were crushed. Weapons and tactics evolved. Brotherhood power armor was studied, leading to a better armor for veterans. Machine guns became standard, and chariots were reinforced for heavier combat. Even the hand dogs' war beasts were tamed and repurposed. Denver was more than a stronghold, it became the new capital. The city was fortified, its resources harnessed, and its streets patrolled by Legion soldiers. By ruling from Denver, Lanius distanced himself from Flagstaff, making it harder for Caesar to launch a potential attack. Lanius, now fully prepared and with his new legion in place, set his sight on Lubbock, a sizable tribe allied with Lone Star, a state part of Texan Brotherhood of Steel alliance. The invasion of Lubbock would spark a war with the Brotherhood itself. Lanius wasted no time. As soon as his forces crossed into Lubbock territory, the assault began. The Legion moved with terrifying speed, overwhelming Lubbock's warriors before they could rally. Chariots shattered their lines, and infantry crushed their resistance. Lubbock's leaders attempted to flee south, but the Legion was faster. Captured and shackled, tribe was forced to surrender. But as the Legion prepared to push deeper, Texan reinforcements arrived. Lone Star's Brotherhood-led forces stood ready, fortified settlements, artillery, and power-armored paladins blocking the way. Seeing the risk, Lanius ordered a halt. Instead of a reckless attack, the Legion dug in, securing their new territory. The war for Texas had only just begun. Lone Star and its allies wasted no time in testing the Legion's defenses. Over the following months, they launched several attacks hoping to push Lanius back. Militia forces, Brotherhood squads, and armored convoys struck at Legion's positions, but each assault was repelled. The Legion held strong. Realizing, however, that a direct push east was impossible, Lanius devised a new strategy. Instead of a head-on assault, he would open a second front. The northern Texas tribes, remained independent, scattered, and vulnerable. If brought under Legion control, they could provide fresh warriors and a new road into Lone Star's territory. The Northern Campaign began with a swift and brutal advance. Hoi4 warband, the first tribe encountered, was quickly overwhelmed. Their warriors fought fiercely, but the Legion's discipline and numbers proved too much. As the warband was scattered and its leaders captured, the path northwards became clear. From there, the Legion continued to sweep through the northern territories, conquering a series of small tribes. Each victory added to the Legion's strength, and new warriors were conscripted into the ranks, and more land was claimed. The smaller tribes fell swiftly, caught off guard and unable to mount an effective resistance against the relentless march of the Legion's forces. With each tribe that fell, the Legion's supply lines grew longer, but so did their resolve. The Northern Campaign had become an unstoppable force. The Hummingbird tribe, a more formidable foe, utilized their rivers to defend, managing to delay the Legion's advance for months. Ambushes and skirmishes became frequent, and at one point, a Legion force found itself encircled. However, Lanius adapted, using the terrain to his advantage, and eventually wearing down the Hummingbirds. After a prolonged siege, their stronghold fell, clearing the path forward. With their defeat, the path was clear to the three Oklahoman tribes, an alliance that presented the last major challenge before the Brotherhood of Steel. Their combined forces were formidable, and they fought back with everything they had. However, the Legion's strategy and encirclement and attrition wore them down. The tribes tried to regroup, but Lanius' forces relentlessly attacked from all directions, cutting off escape routes and overwhelming the enemy with sheer numbers. The Oklahoman tribe's alliance faltered as they faced the full might of the Legion. After crushing the Oklahoman tribes, only one final independent tribe remained. They fell quickly, leaving the Texan Brotherhood of Steel and their Lone Star allies as the Legion's only remaining enemy. Stretched thin, the Brotherhood launched a desperate counterattack, reclaiming some lost territory, but Lanius struck back hard, overwhelming their defenses. The Legion pushed forward, crossing several rivers and pushing deep into Brotherhood's territory. Desperate to stop Lanius, the Texan Brotherhood of Steel united all remaining Texan forces into a single nation, the Texan Republic. Absorbing their Lone Star allies and annexing independent militias, city-states, and mercenary groups, they formed a last, unified defense. In the weeks following the formation of the Texan Republic, the Legion advanced relentlessly, smashing through badly assembled defenses. Despite their newfound unity, the Texans failed to establish a strong defensive line, forced into a constant retreat as Lanius outmaneuvered and encircled their forces at every turn. The Legion's superior coordination and battle-hardened troops slowly wore down the Republic's strength. Isolated garrisons were overrun, key supply routes were severed, and entire battalions found themselves cut off and destroyed. With each battle, the Republic's ability to resist crumbled further. By December 2280, the Texan forces were in total disarray. Their final defensive lines had collapsed, their war industry was in ruins, and deserters surged as morale plummeted. At the dawn of the new year, on January 1st, the Texan Republic surrendered. The war was over. Lanius had conquered Texas. Some time ago, Caesar had started his campaign against the new California Republic, but with his health failing, it was only a matter of time before cracks began to form in his empire. The whispers of discontent within the Legion grew louder, and factions began to stir. It was clear that his rule wouldn't last forever. Caesar's forces stretched thin. It was apparent that should the Legion split, we would have a clear advantage. How long before the fractures became impossible to ignore, only time would tell. But when that moment would come, we would be ready to claim what was ours.